Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our virtual roadshow with OceanaGold Corporation. And with us here is Sam Pazuki, the Senior Vice President of Corporate Development. Welcome and good morning, Sam. How are you?
Not too bad, Johan. How are you? Good afternoon.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All good here, except that we have too much snow, but it is winter time, you know. And yeah, people are logging in. Welcome to everybody. That's fantastic. My name is Jochen Steiger. As I think most or all of you really know me. I'm the CEO and founder of Swiss Resource Capital and also the chief editor and founder of Rohstoff-TV and Commodity TV. And it's fantastic to have so many people in our today's virtual roadshow. And I must say, this is really an exceptional, company, OceanaGold, and it is by now a 300,000 ounce per year gold producer with mines operating in New Zealand and also in the US. And of course, we want to talk about the Philippines because it looks like there is like a positive surprise, hopefully for 2021, that they can restart mining there. And I see people still and investors are still checking in here. So we give it another 20 seconds before we start with the presentation, that everybody has the chance to be with us really here from the beginning. Maybe, Sam, you want to give us your short opinion on the gold price?
Well, it's it's held in there. It's been a good year, I guess, for gold. We saw it reach record highs, and it's been fairly volatile. I was looking at the chart in November, and it was fairly volatile with sort of a mix of presidential election and vaccine, etc. I think we'll probably be range bound. I mean, nobody really knows. Nobody has a crystal ball that's better than anyone else's. But I think with the amount of stimulus money that's already put into the system, and I don't think the economy is doing as well as what the stock market's actually showing. So my belief is that the gold price will remain robust and probably get stronger next year at some point. So we may see some weakness, but I do see it in terms of the medium term being pretty strong.
Fantastic. Great. So that is a great start for our virtual roadshow. Before I turn up the presentation here, as most of you know it already, in our virtual roadshow, all email addresses and names are hidden. We are fully complying to European and Swiss data security laws here. And please have your questions then ready, written and typed into the chat function. The chat function is the third button in the vertical gray bar. You see it named chat, and yep, there's already somebody asking here. That's fantastic. And you see that, and please post your questions. And as always, we do like 20-25 minutes of presentation, and then we gotta put a lot of questions to Sam. So I will put up the presentation, and Sam, then I would say the floor is yours.
All right, super. No, thanks everyone for joining today. I hope your families and your loved ones are all doing well and are healthy. So we're approaching the end of this miserable year, and it's a good opportunity here to sort of talk about OceanaGold. We've had a challenging year, no doubt. It's been very tough, probably the toughest year for my professional in my professional career. And this is not something that we're used to at OceanaGold. We've been, at one point we were a market darling. We were often told that we were an expensive stock, and that's a very good place to be, and we're certainly working pretty hard to get back there again. There's a lot of great things happening for us at OceanaGold, and a lot of good things have been going on in terms of advancing the organic growth pipeline that we've discussed and are happy to share updates on. But it's also, from a COVID perspective, it's been fairly challenging as well, and in particular in South Carolina. So I'm going to just go through some of the slides, some of the key points here. And there's the cautionary statements that our lawyers want us to always mention. But as Johan mentioned, this year our production levels are about 300,000 ounces with AISC ranging between 1150 and 1250. There's the map. We've got a headquarters in Brisbane in Australia. We've got an office in Denver. I'm based in Toronto. 4 operations, 3 of which are in operation, with Haile in South Carolina, Waihi on the North Island, McRae's, which is where OceanaGold started, on the South Island, and then the Philippines, we've got Didipio, which is currently not operating, but hopefully it will be soon. So from a production perspective, that's where we are from the 3 operations. Again, it's been a challenging year where we've had to downgrade guidance, particularly at Haile, because of the ongoing risks associated with COVID. It's also been a very challenging year from a weather perspective, where basically the amount of rainfall that we've received is at a 35-year high. And as we're opening up more pits, as we're at the top of these ore bodies, it's a bit too slippery and the productivity levels fall off. But I'll get into a bit more detail as we go, and I'm sure people have some questions as well. From an ESG perspective, we are one of the best ESG rated gold companies in the industry. If you are using the MSCI as your bellwether, we've got an A rating. We're one of the few gold companies that has an A rating. And we know that ESG has become something of a buzzword in the last, or buzz acronym in the last couple of years. We've been doing this for 30 years. When you operate where we operate in New Zealand, Philippines, US, you need to make sure that you have a very strong ESG program. You have very strong ESG policies. And of course, you need to have a very strong ESG performance. So that's something that we take pride in, and that's something we'll continue to work on as we go forward. So in terms of the strategic focus, I've touched on ESG. Again, we wouldn't be in operations for 30 years if we didn't do this well. We've always been a company that has focused on delivering on our commitments. It's been a very challenging year in the last 2 years, and we're feeling in the share price. So for us, we need to continue to be focused on executing on our operational plans. And I can assure you that we are head down, looking to deliver across the board on our operations, on our projects, and with any other commitments that we're making out there. We pride ourselves of having one of the best growth pipelines in the gold industry. We've got a number of great projects, some of which we're advancing right now, some of which we're at the exploration and permitting stage. So Johan mentioned, I mentioned that this year we're at around 300,000 ounces of gold production. We expect over the next few years to jump up to around 400,000 ounces, but then you start seeing some step changes up to 500 to 600,000 ounces from the organic growth pipeline. And all of that excludes Didipio. So when Didipio does come back online, that adds another circa 120,000 ounces of gold plus 11 to 12,000 tons of copper. So the balance sheet, we continue to look for opportunities to strengthen the balance sheet. We've got a group of supportive international banks that we have a revolving credit facility with. We continue to engage with them to look for opportunities to refinance that revolver, and that's something that we're currently working on. And of course, we had some news recently with respect to the Philippines and Didipio. So a major step forward, a positive step forward in terms of securing that FTAA renewal. So the president has asked his departments to finalize the terms and conditions of our FTAA. So we're hopeful that is something that we can do in the near term. I mean, the government has already stated its desire for a quick resolution. And so we are optimistic, I should say cautiously optimistic, and we'll continue to focus on that and work with the local stakeholders to get the FTA secured and get Didipio back into operations. From a capital allocation perspective, I mentioned the balance sheet already. So this is sort of a snapshot in terms of net debt, cash, debt, total debt as of the end of the third quarter. Some things have moved around, obviously, in the fourth quarter. But we also completed the bought deal offering, where we issued equity and netted proceeds of $122 million to shore up the balance sheet. So we will continue to look for opportunities to strengthen the balance sheet. That debt that you see there from the facility is due at the end of next year. So again, working with the banks to refinance that and push that debt out by at least 1 year. So from a free cash flow perspective, we are in a growth mode. Obviously, the gold price helps in terms of operating cash flow, but we are reinvesting into the business. Again, robust organic growth pipeline that we're very happy to invest in. They will deliver high returns to shareholders. But at the same time, we need to be disciplined, and we are disciplined, and looking at ways to make future debt repayments, but also return capital to shareholders.
Mhm.
I've touched on ESG, so I'm going to just sort of skip through. I'm sure there'll be some questions on the Philippines, so I won't spend too much time on the formal part of the presentation. So from a valuation perspective, this is a significant opportunity, we believe, for investors. I'm a shareholder of Oceana. I've been buying shares of OceanaGold because I believe in the long-term value of this business. We've got fantastic assets. The two in New Zealand and Haile alone are high-quality assets, top-tier assets in top-tier jurisdictions. We are currently trading at the same valuation as one asset. So there is a lot of value still to unlock. And again, we're focused on delivering on that value. So the graph on the left, this is dated November 30th. We did see a big jump in the share price on Monday with the news out of the Philippines. But even despite that, we there's still a lot of value to gain, and you can see that from a relative valuation perspective on the two graphs on the right hand side. Whatever your metric is, price to NAV or price to cash flow, if you want to look at EV to EBITDA, we are trading at a major discount relative to our peers on basically any metric that you can possibly think of. So there is a lot of value still to gain. We believe that this is a great opportunity to get into the stock. Obviously, the risks associated with COVID are still real. The Carolinas has not improved. It's actually gotten worse from a state perspective. We continue to manage those risks, but again, we believe in the long-term value of this business and believe in the long-term value of the assets. And the organic growth, this is a major part of the OceanaGold story. We've got growth across the board. So in South Carolina at Haile, we've got the Haile Underground that we are currently in the permitting process. We expect to receive that permit in the near term and expect to start developing the Haile Underground in the second half of next year. Once we get going, we think it's about a year to get into first production. And then a quick ramp up to the nominal rate of 70 to 90,000 ounces a year. The growth capital is approximately $80 million over a couple of years. We'll start spending that next year. And then right now, with just based on reserves, the Haile Underground has a mine life of 4 or 5 years. But as we've disclosed in some of our previous news releases, we think the future of Haile is actually underground. There's a number of targets in the underground, so we'll continue to explore. Particularly once we go underground, we'll look to explore and increase the mine life of the underground, which has the highest grade feed in the operation. Then at Waihi, Waihi we purchased from Newmont back in 2015. It only had a 3-year mine life. We've come out with a PEA which shows a mine life out to 2036. We're fairly confident that the mine life will extend beyond that. The two major projects out of the Waihi district study that we published earlier this year are Martha Underground, which is currently in development. First production will be in the second quarter is our expectation. We are mining ore from Martha Underground as we speak. And so that will be a project that will go online and will ramp up to 90 to 100,000 ounces a year. Next year, we'll probably do about 35 to 45,000 ounces, and then a quick ramp up to 90 to 100,000 ounces a year. The mine life right now to 2028, but as we stated in the PEA, we only used half the resource that was on the books. So for us, we've continued to drill at Martha Underground, and we've continued to convert resources. So that's something to be on the lookout for as we go into the new year. And then WKP, we've described it as a game changer. It truly is a game-changing discovery. It's 10 kilometers to the north of the Waihi process plant. It's a deposit that sits under conservation, so we are looking at operating it as an underground mine and tunneling back to the Waihi process plant. We've had some phenomenal drill results over the years. We've got a current resource of 1.1 million ounces, high grade, 12, 13 grams. But that's only based on 35,000 meters of drilling. So not a lot of drilling to come up with a resource like that. We've continued to drill this year. We expect WKP to be a multi-million ounce discovery. but obviously we'll be drilling this out for the next several years, probably much longer. But we've got a very good feeling about WKP, and we're working hard to get that into production, which right now, in terms of our conservative timelines, it's 2026. And then at McRae's, so over to the South Island of New Zealand, again, this is where OceanaGold started. Golden Point Underground, we just recently been permitted that, and we started development of the underground. We expect to see first production out of Golden Point Underground in about a year's time. It'll deliver about 40 to 50,000 ounces of gold a year. Currently mine life out to 2025, but what we've seen with the Fraser's Underground, which went into production in 2008 and had a 6 or 7 year mine life, we think that Golden Point Underground will continue as long as there's open pit operations as well. And then obviously with the open pits, we've got identified a number of new cutbacks on some existing pits and some on some new deposits along the 35-kilometer strike length. So McRae's is truly the mine that keeps on giving, and next year won't have any hedges, and we'll be free to enjoy the high gold price, which at $1,800, McRae should spit out $80 to $90 million of free cash flow. So not too bad for an asset that nobody really asks us too many questions on. So this is some numbers from the Haile 43-101. You shouldn't use this necessarily as guidance. We will come out with a formal guidance in the new year, and just on that, we'll likely come out with a 5-year guidance. So investors will have an opportunity to see what Oceana would look like over the next 5 years. So from the 43-101 technical report perspective, those are the numbers. It doesn't apply some of the risks that we normally would apply when we set our guidance each year. It didn't include any risks associated with COVID. South Carolina continues to experience a substantial increase in new cases, COVID cases. Just a week ago, they were getting 1,200 new cases of COVID each day. Today, it's about 2,400 new cases a day. It's hard. A lot of people try to compare Haile to other operations in the U.S. or Canada or even Australia, and the question about, well, how come everyone else has been able to handle COVID better than you guys? Well, I mean, that's great for them, but we are in a completely different part of the world. We are in a part of the world where they're not necessarily following the same laws we do, say, in Canada with respect to wearing masks and physical distancing, etc. We're de-risking the Haile operation as much as we can. We've been able to keep it sort of free of any outbreaks. We've seen outbreaks at other operations and other industries in the U.S. where they've been shut down for a month. So for us, we're trying to avoid that situation, and I'd say they've done a remarkable job to manage that risk. But it has presented a significant degree of absenteeism because of the protocols we do have in place. We've had, I think, around 35 positive COVID cases since the pandemic started. Well, I guess since it was reported on in March. But it has impacted mine utilization rates where we're not moving as much material as we thought we would when the year started. But again, the risk is being managed, and we're keeping our workforce as healthy and safe as we possibly can. But we are into the higher grades. I know a lot of people are focusing on the fourth quarter and how Haile has sort of performed since the third quarter. Again, COVID hasn't gone anywhere. We've had fewer people sit off, which has been good, and the mine utilization rate has increased. Good news is that we're into the higher grades that we've talked about all year. So we are mining the higher grades, and those grades are expected to continue into next year. So for next year, we expect that the first half of the year will be much stronger than the second half on the back of grade. And Haile is not your traditional ore body. It's geometrically complex. You do have pockets of high grade. You do have to move material to get to the high grade. And so this is why we'll continue to have some variability in production quarter on quarter. But once we get the underground in, and once we open up some additional pits, then we'll have more operational flexibility, and hopefully smooth out that production profile. But you can see here what production does once we get into the underground. So with both the Horseshoe Underground or the Haile Underground plus open pits, Haile is a circa 240, 250,000 ounce a year producer. And from the charts, you can see that in some years it could be a bit higher than that. but no promises. And it's a it's a long mine life, and we are the only ones in the Carolinas. So through exploration, we do expect to continue to make new discoveries and extend the mine life of Haile. So you can see here just very quickly from the exploration perspective, there's the pit outline. The green represents the different deposits we have and the different open pits we'll be mining over the next 13 years. We've got Horseshoe, which will be the first deposit that we'll be mining from in the underground. And then there's the strike length, about 1 kilometer between Horseshoe and Palomino, where we've done some drilling, have discovered some, well, there's definitely a lot of smoke there. And once we get underground, we'll do some extensive drilling like we did at Waihi to prove up some additional resources. So some of the other targets you can see there between Horseshoe and Palomino, which is the only 2 deposits that are on the books from a resource perspective. There's areas at depth with Horseshoe that isn't in resource, but there's clearly some mineralized zones there, high-grade mineralized zones. And in the area in between, we've had Snakeshoe that we've talked about in the last couple of years. And then more recently, we said that there's 2 new targets. One is Pisces, which again is in that corridor, and then Aquarius, which is actually outside that corridor. So lots of opportunity there to discover additional ounces. There's more than just what you see there. There's underground potential, even with the open pits that aren't labeled but are shown there in green. There are potential depth extensions there with Ledbetter, Mustang, etc. So moving on to Waihi, you can see there, I mean, that chart is representing what was in the 43-101 document, which we released earlier this year. So we are working at potentially getting to the full ramp-up rate with Martha Underground sooner. So that profile might change a bit, but you can see the significant jump in production once you get WKP into production. And more importantly, you can see the significant increase in margin as well too. So once we get some of these projects into place and Martha Underground ramps up, WKP ramps up, you can see that Waihi becomes arguably the best asset in our portfolio and arguably one of the best operations on the planet with first quartile all-in sustaining costs and a significant amount of production. So mine life, as I mentioned, out to 2036. There is a capital investment that's required, but it's spread out over 9 years. In New Zealand, they've done fairly well from a COVID perspective, but their economy is in the worst state it's been since the Great Depression. They do heavily rely on tourism as a major source of revenue. That doesn't look like it's going to come back anytime soon. So the government, which has been recently reelected with the majority mandate, they have talked about removing some of the red tape associated with development projects. They've talked about advancing shovel-ready projects, which we believe we've got a few, including WKP. So depending on how that progresses, there is an opportunity to fast-track some of these projects, but we'll have to wait to see. So for now, we just say use the timelines that we've provided in the 43-101, and if there's improvements in terms of timelines, then that's going to be a win-win for everyone. And that's just a snapshot of the different projects which we outlined in the Waihi district study. So it's more than just the Martha Underground and WKP, which are the 2 gems in the district, but there are also a couple open pits too, with Martha having been a historic pit, and we're looking to permit a 5th cutback, and in Gladstone, which would be a new open pit right next to the process plant. So very strong free cash flows. Exploration, I mean, that's been ongoing all year. We haven't stopped drilling at Martha Underground or WKP. We continue to see some similar drill results to what we've previously published. We will come out with resource updates in the new year and exploration updates. So with the Martha Underground, as I mentioned, we only used half the 1.3 million ounces that's currently on the books in the PEA. So we will continue to prove up some of the other ounces that was excluded from that study and put that into the mine plan. And then on top of that, we've got this exploration target, which is 6 to 8 million tons at 4 to 6 grams. So we're drilling those areas, which you can see from that image. It's the purple areas. So over the next few years, we'll be drilling to prove that mineralization up and get that into the mine plan. And we certainly do see a lot more mineralized areas, particularly at depth. So there's the two, well, they're now production drives, but they were drill drives, and we are drilling off of them still. We are looking to build a third drill drive beneath those two to do some at-depth drilling, some extensive drilling to prove up even more mineralized zones. And then WKP, most of the drilling efforts have been at East Graben vein, which is the one to the right, which you can see all the drill traces. We don't know how big WKP is. We don't know how big even the one vein at East Graben is. It is open in multiple directions along strike. It's open at depth, and we continue to drill it. You can see where we have number 6. That's a drill pad we have there, testing for extensions to the southwest. And then drill pad number 7 to drill for extensions of the other 2 veins there that you see, P stream, which is in the middle, and then the western vein to the left. So we don't know, again, we don't even know how big East Graben is to know how big P stream and western vein are. But we believe, I mean, we're very excited about WKP, and we truly believe that this is a multi-million ounce discovery. But it won't happen overnight. There's still a lot of drilling to do, and we're certainly going to be investing some healthy amount of capital to exploration efforts, both the WKP and Martha Underground. And there's some general timelines, which again you can look at from past presentations that we've put out. We've got the Martha Underground feasibility study. So the previous study was a PEA for the entire district. So we will come out with a feasibility study just on Martha Underground in likely the end of the first quarter in 2021. Then we've got the WKP pre-feasibility, which we expect toward the back half of next year, and then to follow that by another study for the surface projects, so that the 2 open pits plus a third tailing storage facility, which we expect in early 2022. So we'll continue to follow the regular process in New Zealand. We do find it to be a very good jurisdiction in terms of permitting. A lot of people, you know, they don't really understand New Zealand, and I think there's a bit of a discount because of that. We've been operating there for 30 years. We've never not received our permits in New Zealand. That's not a guarantee that you're going to get all your permits, but we've never had an issue with receiving permits. So we're a good corporate steward. You know, let me correct that. We're a fantastic corporate steward. We're a responsible miner. We are the template for responsible mining in a country where they'll demand responsible mining. And one of the things that we've come out with is a commitment to become zero carbon, or basically carbon neutral by 2050. And we'll come out with some specific targets that we'll set in the next couple of years to achieve that. And that aligns with what the New Zealand government has targeted as well too, to become zero carbon by 2050. And then, I mean, I've spent a lot of time here on Waihi, and I've chewed up to 25 minutes, Johan, so I apologize for that.
It's okay.
But I mean, there's, as I mentioned, I mean, there's significant opportunity here just at Waihi. So finding extensions to Martha Underground pushes out that mine life, as you can see by the arrow. WKP, again, we just drilled the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's plenty of opportunity there to further expand WKP and push that out. And then that gives you more flexibility in what to do with the Martha open pit. I mean, right now we have that going into production in 2028. So either you continue to mine it and stockpile it for future processing, or what you could do is do another expansion on the process plant at Waihi to feed Martha Underground, WKP, and Martha open pit. And then you can see that production in that scenario would be well north of 300,000 ounces a year if you're looking at that as a possible scenario. But just with Martha Underground and the high grade WKP, I mean, you can see where production levels are. I mean, it's a significant it will be a significant operation for us and OceanaGold shareholders. And then I'll just spend a couple minutes on our cash flow machine, McRae's. I mean, nobody cares about free cash flow, right? They talk about growth, but we like free cash flow. It funds the business, and McRae's basically will be having a very strong free cash flow generation over the next several years. We've come out with a mine life extension of out to 2027, 2028 plus, with nominal production of 150 to 170,000 ounces at circa $1,000 an ounce. We think there's more potential. We think there's good potential to continue to extend the mine life at McRae's. And so we'll continue to drill here and explore here and operate here. It's one of the most efficient operations on the planet. They're not blessed with high grade like their neighbors to the north at Waihi. It's a gram open pit, 2 grams underground. It's refractory. It's preg robbing. We do quite a bit to treat the ore through the process plant. We do that for $7 US a ton, which is probably one of the most efficient process plants in the world. And mining wise, I mean, right now it's $1.30, and we're hauling ore 10 kilometers away to the process plant at McRae's. So to do that for $1.30 US, I mean, this is a marvel. This is a technical marvel here, one in which we're very proud of. And there's lots of opportunities to discover additional ounces along the strike length. It's 35 kilometers in its entirety. This here from the image is, I believe, around 12 or 13 kilometers. So there's plenty of the South Island that we can look to dig up. But we're certainly focused on where the process plant is and finding additional ounces to feed the existing mill. And there are other projects like the Round Hill, which would require us to move that mill to access 1.5 million ounces that's sterilized by its location. So that's something that we are working on, and we may potentially have some additional information on this next year. We don't need to do anything with this project until we've exhausted all other opportunities at McRae's. So this is an end of mine life opportunity. So we're not moving any process plant for at least the next 8, 9, 10 plus years. So just to wrap up here, long-term value, we are trading at a significant discount. Again, it's been a painful year. We're cautiously optimistic with where we are going with some of the recent announcements out of the Philippines, with the improvements of operations at Haile, with the ongoing positive work we're doing with respect to exploration, advancing the organic growth pipeline in New Zealand. We'll be building a new underground at Haile. So there's a lot of good things, a lot of great things that are happening at OceanaGold. We're working very hard to deliver on all our commitments, to deliver on that growth and continue to be one of the most responsible gold mining companies on the planet. And so with that, I will wrap up the formal presentation, Johan, and I guess we'll take some questions.
Yeah, perfect, Sam. Thank you very much. I stopped the slide presentation here, and yeah, there are a lot of questions here already. I have one question up front before we start. As we saw, you will have a lot of growth capital over the next 2-3 years. Is the growth capital already factored into the AISC? And if yes, that's fine. If not, would that be a problem, or how do you finance that then?
Yeah, so our all-in sustaining costs, we're actually one of the a few companies who put a lot into the all-in sustaining costs, so basically aligned with the World Gold Council definition of what is in and what is out. So growth capital is not factored into all-in sustaining costs. The whole measure is to identify on a relative basis what is the actual cost per ounce of gold that you produce. So growth is not factored into that calculation because it's not production that you're seeing now. It's for future production. So the growth capital, I mean, when we come out with our disclosures, we do separate it out. I think we're fairly transparent in terms of what's in and what's out. So the growth capital is traditionally out of the AISC, but it's financed through cash flow from the operations. It's financed through the equity raise that we just did. We said that the proceeds are going to be used to fund the Haile Underground, to continue the exploration efforts in New Zealand and advance our growth projects. Again, we've got a very strong group of supportive banks, and we're working with them right now to expand and extend that credit facility. So from our perspective, we think we're in the right place from a balance sheet perspective to advance the organic growth opportunities forward.
Okay, so then we have two questions from Paul. First of all, he's asking if Oceana is still on track to do, let's say, approximately 90 to 95,000 ounces for Q4 with AISC of $990, because he thinks that would be needed to get to the 295,000 ounces for the year and 1,250 AISC for the full year. What's your comment on that?
Yeah, so we're back into production at Waihi, so we should expect to see that it will achieve its guidance and produce 7,000 to 8,000 ounces in the fourth quarter. McRae's, we had the 5-week period where we were just limited in terms of what we could operate because of COVID and the shutdowns and restrictions that we had there. So we did revise the guidance, and we're feeling fairly confident that we'll achieve the guidance range for McRae's. With Haile, it's one of the things that we've talked about is how sensitive the mine plan is to grade. So it's all mine sequence, and what that means basically is that we have to move material to be able to access the higher grade zones. And once you get to the higher grade zones, obviously production levels will increase. Going into the second half of this year, we were already behind schedule in terms of mining movements because of the restrictions and protocols we had in place from a COVID perspective. But also we had some very unusual weather in a time where there isn't unusual weather. So for example, May, we had 12 and a half inches of rainfall. May is supposed to be dry. We're only supposed to see 3 inches of rainfall. We managed to mine a lot of material, but nevertheless, we went into the second half of the year down about 10% on material movements. And then Q3 just ended up being a nightmare. We had a lot of absenteeism because of COVID. We started to see an increase in the number of positive cases, and we sort of believe that the July 4th weekend and the celebrations led to the increase or the spike in COVID cases. And so we fell even further behind on mining movements, and we've been playing catch up ever since. So the fourth quarter, from a COVID perspective, we've seen fewer absenteeism or less absenteeism, as I've mentioned. We have seen an increase in the positive cases, but there's certainly no outbreak on site. But we've increased the mine utilization rates. So where we are right now is basically, when I look at what the mine plan was when the year started, we're about a quarter behind. So where we are now is where we expect it to be in September, and that's when we saw the high grades report to the mill. So it's going to be very close. We are forecasting to the lower end of the guidance range at Haile, but we literally won't know until a few days before, because we need to see the grades continue on for the rest of this month. But what I've seen in the last week plus is that the grade is there. We are processing some high grades, and there's some grades there I didn't even think Haile had. So that's all positive, but we have to continue to focus on managing those risks to be able to achieve the guidance.
Of course, great. As we are talking already about AISC, we saw a lot of, let's say, future projections from you, future, mines are going in production, especially next year already. That's a big year for you. And I know it's a forward-looking statement for the regulators, but if you would guess, where do you see, let's say, the average group AISC within the next 2-3 years? Well below 1,000?
Yeah, so I mean, we're going to come out with a 5-year guidance. So we've traditionally just provided guidance for the coming year, but this year, or for next year going forward, we are looking to provide a multi-year guidance. We are currently working through the budgeting, so that's a process that's underway, and so we don't have the specific numbers yet. So I can't make any promises, and I think everyone's going to have to wait until the formal guidance comes out. But just at a very high level, and excluding Didipio, you should expect that Oceana, if we come in at, say, 300,000 this year, you should expect to see a good change for next year, an increase next year. You've got 35 to 45,000 ounces from Waihi. You've got 150, 160,000 ounces from McRae's, and with Haile, again, COVID hasn't gone anywhere, and we've had 2 years where we've been beaten up by weather, and so in the 43-101, they only factored in 23 days where we were shut down because of weather. Didn't factor in any COVID. Just to put into perspective, we've had 55 days of no mining this year because of weather and COVID. So it's not going to be 55 days. It won't be 23 days. It'll be something in between. in terms of what we factor in from a risk perspective. So Haile will likely have a wide guidance. Not sure specifically what it is, but let's just say it'll be in the 150 to 200,000 ounce range. So over the next few years, Oceana, again, without Didipio, is circa 400,000 ounce a year producer at, say, 1,000, 1,100 AISC. And then in year 4, you should expect to see production will be over 500,000 ounces. Let's say years 4 and 5 will be between 500 and 600,000 ounces, and the AISC would be will be closer to, say, 900 all in. Again, that excludes Didipio. You factor in Didipio. Full year's production at Didipio is about 110 to 120,000 ounces a year, with copper production of about 11 to 12,000 tons a year. The AISC, I mean, right now the copper prices are very good, very strong, and the AISC, I mean, we report a byproduct all-in sustaining cost. So the number I have in my head, which is based on a $2.80 copper price, is an AISC of about 600, 650. So obviously with the higher copper prices, we can do that.
Yeah, so there's also a lot of room for positive surprises. So let's talk about Didipio, because we see already questions here. If Gordon is asking if Didipio, or more optimistically, when Didipio starts up again, what will be the timeline and costs associated to do so?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a question that we've been getting in the last couple of days. How quickly we can restart will be dependent on when we are green lit to restart. So we have permanently laid off the workforce, the vast majority of the workforce, in October and then again in November. But because we're so close to when we've laid them off, we feel fairly confident if we were green lit, say today or before the end of the year, that we could rehire a majority of that workforce, bring them back into service. COVID is like, if the Philippines has been hit fairly hard from a COVID perspective, I mean, it's the worst hit Southeastern Asian country. And so there aren't a lot of jobs, which is sad. It's very sad that, we were in a position where we had to lay them off, and it's very unlikely that they would have found employment that quickly. So if we're green lit before the end of the year, we can rehire the vast majority of the workforce. One of the first things we can do is get the trucks going so we can move out the concentrate that we produced a year ago. There's a significant amount of concentrate that's sitting there at site. So that's one of the first things that we'll do, especially with metal prices being what they are. It's good timing. It's a lot higher than where it was when we produced that material. So that's one of the first things we'll do. We'll also bring in supplies. We do have supplies in a warehouse in Manila, so we will start the trucks up to start delivering those supplies to site. And these are the things you need to restart the process plant and mining operations. They're your reagents, they're your fuel, they're your explosives, etc. So again, a lot of it is dependent on when we can rehire the workforce and then train them up in some cases, particularly with the underground. But if we're greenlit now, we feel confident we can rehire them quickly. And then the process plant, we think we could ramp that up in a 3 to 4 week time period, again, if it happened now. And then we basically process low-grade stockpiles, of which we have 19 million tons of. So we've got several years of stockpiles just sitting on surface. And then the underground starts to ramp up. We think that's going to take a lot longer to ramp up. By our estimates right now, maybe 3 to 4 months, again, if we're greenlit now. But what we've said publicly is that it could take up to 12 months to ramp up to full production. But that's going to be dependent on when we get the workforce back.
Okay. And when you received it FTAA, then everything is really in good standing. It's not like that, 2 years later, there might be some changes. Yeah,
it's a 25-year renewal. So, okay. Yeah, so it's a contract that's, guaranteed for 25 years. We argue that we are the most responsible mining company in the country. Didipio is the template for responsible mining in the country. We believe that all operations in the country should mimic what we do in Didipio. It's very strong from an environmental perspective. We've got the strong endorsement of the local communities. We've got thousands of people who support Didipio. the operation, thousands of people who support OceanaGold as the operator. I've been to the Philippines several times. I was there in 2012 when we were building Didipio. I can tell you the community, they were basically in some significant poverty. And you go there today, we've lifted them out of poverty. We've built schools, we've built hospitals, we've built roads. We've sent their children to university. We've subsidized teacher salaries. We've subsidized medical doctors and nurses and medical practitioners. We've built infrastructure. We've cleaned the water. We've tried to address some of the issues that have happened more closely in close proximity due to the environmental damage that the small-scale miners have done. We've planted over 1 million trees. I mean, this is, there's a textbook on responsible mining, Didipio is the case study for it. And so from that perspective, we've got a very strong relationship with our stakeholders. And so I've always encouraged investors not to listen to the nonsense spread by these NGOs. They're just a handful in country. They're not even from the local communities. These are some of the challenges we have to continue to manage. But again, I'll go toe-to-toe with anyone who wants to challenge our track record in the Philippines.
Okay, super. Then we have two questions from an investor here in Switzerland. First question is Haile underground. Is there more metallurgy work, test work required? And then he's also asking what sort of investors came into the board deal, mainly current investors, activists, generalists. So if you can advise there, please too.
Yeah, so with the Haile underground, I'll address that first. So we've done quite a bit of test work, metallurgic test work. On Horseshoe. I believe we've done a fair bit of metallurgical test work on Palomino as well. So it's very consistent with what we're mining today from the open pits. Arguably Horseshoe, you could have mined that as an open pit. You just have a lot more waste, and then we've got a challenge with real estate there. So the difference really is that the underground is higher grade. So you're providing a higher grade feed into the mill and increasing production at a much healthier margin. There's plenty of gold in the underground, as I've mentioned. So Horseshoe, we've got about 700,000 ounces that's in resource. About 450 of it is in reserves, high grade. And there's an area just below that. We called it the Horseshoe Deeps. I guess these guys aren't very good at marketing, so they keep the names fairly simple. But it's, it is something that we see a lot of potential to expand, and then we'll continue to drill across the corridor as well. And again, we say that the future of the underground at Haile, the future of Haile is the underground. So you've got the higher grade feed, and you also de-risk it by having more operational flexibility, plus the weather issues that we've had in the Carolinas, whether it's climate change or El Nino. You don't have to worry about that if you're mining in underground. Mm-hmm. And then on the second question, with respect to the bought deal, we saw our existing shareholders participate in the raise. We gained a significant new shareholder who took the lion's share of the deal. Obviously, I've known these guys for years. They're very detail oriented. They're very technical. They're very long-term focused, and they saw the opportunity and took advantage of it. And we've seen a number of generalists and specialists come into the stock as well too on the back of the deal.
Mm-hmm, fantastic. Then we have two questions from German shareholders. The first thing is, do you still hold the project of former Pacific Rim in El Salvador? And the second question, it's more a little bit general. What's about earthquakes in New Zealand? I'm not aware that anything happened.
Sure. So Pacific Rim, I guess that's still the name of the subsidiary. Technically, we do own it, but we've already done all the reclamation work there, and we're basically 99% or 99.9% of the way of completely exiting that country. Mm-hmm. So that's not an opportunity that we're looking at or would be interested in. I think the government there, El Salvador has struggled economically for a number of years now, and they've had challenges obviously with COVID. They elected a new president last year. He seems to be business friendly. So there is maybe a potential to restart things at some point in Christchurch several years ago, which was quite devastating. We do have seismic activity at McRae's and Waihi. It's usually not where you see the major earthquakes. We do monitor for any seismic activity, and that's part of running a mining business or mining operation that sits on the ring of fire. So that's something that we are aware of and we manage, but we've never had any significant, touch wood, we've never had any significant seismic activity at either.
Are there any plans for establishing a dividend in the near future?
Yeah, I mean, we're committed. You know, we believe that we have been one of the best capital allocators in the industry. We've just gone through this two-year period where things have been really, really tough. We had a dividend that we were paying. It was a 2% dividend paid semi-annually, plus a discretionary amount. So discretion at the board's discretion. We'd like to get back to that situation where we are returning capital back to shareholders. So whether it's in the form of dividends or whether it's buying back shares, that is something that the board is very keen on reestablishing. And I think with if you know, touch wood, if we get Didipio back on, I think we'd be in a position to do that sooner rather than later. And in the absence of Didipio, you know, I think right now the best use of proceeds, free cash flow, is to reinvest in the exciting organic growth pipeline that we do have.
Okay, organic growth is one thing. There we have a question from a shareholder, also from Germany, who is asking, do you have the plan, or do you plan to acquire additional mines? If yes, what is your profile for additional mines? Or do you say no, organic growth is enough?
Yeah, we've got plenty on our plates right now. So we are focused inward. We're focused on delivering on our operations. So we need to deliver on Haile. We need to deliver on our operating plans in New Zealand. So that's what we're focused on. We're focused on delivering Martha underground, getting into first production in the second quarter of next year, like we've stated, and then continuing to advance the other opportunities that we have in the pipeline. So focused on delivering Haile underground, focused on advancing WKP, and eventually getting that permitted and into production, and exploration. I mean, I would love to be the VP of exploration at OceanaGold. We've got lots of exciting exploration ground in South Carolina. We've got amazing opportunities in New Zealand, both on the North Island and the South Island. So there's no reason for us to look externally. We've got enough on our plates. We need to deliver on what we have on our plates first and foremost. We do believe there needs to be consolidation in the industry. So once we get the valuation up, once we start delivering on these projects and we start to realize the value in the share price, then we'll look to see how we can sort of merge with an equal, a like-minded company, that we can sort of establish a larger company and be able to do a lot more. And obviously you want to make sure you're lining up the synergies in that scenario as well. But right now we are not looking for acquisitions. We are focused inwards and delivering on what we have on our plate, which is plenty.
There's also another question relating to valuation, and the gentleman is asking, aren't you in fear that you are a takeover target because the stock is really way too cheap?
I don't like to use the word cheap. I think it's definitely an opportunity for investors looking to acquire a piece of a business that is as robust as ours is and will be. Amount of growth in our business is very exciting. It's a reason to own the stock. I mean, if you're looking for a quick gain in the next 6 months to a year, you might get that with Philippines. I think that is the biggest catalyst that we have in the stock. But when you look at all the other opportunities that we have in our business, there's a lot of reasons for long-term investors to own this stock and be patient. Yeah, we are, because of where we're trading, we do feel fairly vulnerable. I think that, again, we've got the best growth pipeline in the industry. We've got fantastic assets. I'm a big believer in our assets. They're high quality. They're top tier, as I've mentioned. And so we'll continue to advance the projects that I mentioned. Again, deliver on our operations and get the share price back up. So in the meantime, we'll look to, we'll see if there's other companies that are looking to take advantage of the situation, but we're working hard to avoid that. But I would consider us to be very shareholder friendly. If there's a transaction that's accretive to our shareholders, we will certainly entertain it.
Absolutely great. Yeah, I've also in my point and figure charts, honestly, I have already a target of $5.50 for the Oceana stock, which is more than a double from today. And also it looks to me like that gold prices really are positioning to go much, much higher next year. Yeah, so let me check on the questions as we are approaching now the hour here. Hang on. Yeah, there's a question from David. Would you ever bring partners into joint venture projects or drilling to speed things up and bring them forward?
Yeah, we would consider that as opportunities. I mean, there's more ground for us to drill than we can actually drill right now. So if there's an opportunity to advance something that we can't advance ourselves because there's only so much capital that we have that we can deploy into the different areas that we're currently drilling and currently operating in. So if there's an opportunity to team up with a like-minded organization, then we would consider that. Again, any way we can create shareholder value is something that we are acutely focused on. I can tell you that I'm a shareholder. I want all of us to.
Me too.
I mean, that's the name of the game. I mean, we're mining a resource, which is contributing significant economic contributions to local communities, to communities that don't have any other options. But at the same time, we are looking to ensure that the owners of our business, which include me, which include you, which include many people that are on this call, we want to make sure that we're getting what we want out of this investment as well too. So what we're going to do it in a responsible way, but we're always going to be looking for opportunities to create significant shareholder value.
Fantastic. Super. So let me check again here. I think we have answered all questions. Also, my list looks really good. Oh, one last question I found here. As you said, you are renegotiating the credit facility and you want to extend that. So the question is to, let's say, what extent you really want to extend it. Is it like 1 year, 2 years? I think you said something already on that. And what interest rate are you paying on this?
Yeah, I wouldn't characterize it as a renegotiation. We're in discussions with the banks to refinance the credit facility. So I'm not across on all the specific details, but one of the things we're looking to do is to expand it, but we're also looking to extend it by at least 1 year. So it's already a credit facility that, from a margin perspective or financing charge perspective, is very competitive. We expect to continue to maintain the competitiveness of the facility. Again, we've got a group of very supportive international banks. We opened this up to additional banks to bid into the process. We had expressions of interest and additional bidders on the process, and so I think what we're going to come out with is a pretty good facility that's still very competitive on a margin perspective, and something that hopefully shareholders would be happy with. I mean, it's been an overhang on the stock. I mean, people look at the $200 million debt repayment due next year, and they are concerned that, especially if gold prices go in the wrong direction. I know you and I believe that it will go in the right direction, but we don't know. We don't know for sure, and you have to manage your balance sheet and your business on the lower gold price environment scenario. So for us, again, we've had a very successful run in terms of refinancing this facility, which we initially put in place in 2013. And we're hopeful, and I'm optimistic, that when we do announce it, whenever that is, that we can remove that overhang from the stock.
Fantastic. Super. Then all questions are answered. We are within the hour now. Fantastic, Sam. Thank you very much for your time. That was really, really interesting and great insight. And I would say the future looks really bright for OceanaGold. We are gold bulls, that is for sure. And we hope it goes in the right direction. But it looks to me like really that Oceana is doing a lot of things right. And let's keep fingers crossed for Didipio.
Yeah, no, thanks, Johan. Again, a lot of good things happening. We're excited for them.
Super. Thank you very much, Sam. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that was Sam Pazuki, the Senior Vice President Corporate Development of OceanaGold, who gave us an insight over the last hour into the company. And I really must say the stock is really undervalued from my perspective. We saw a big jump in the last days due to the hopefully soon renewal of the Didipio license. That would be for another 25 years, which would be outstanding. And also you see a lot of organic growth, a lot of of good things are happening in the company. The costs are coming down. The production will rise from next year onwards, and great jurisdictions, New Zealand and the US, of course, fantastic. And soon, hopefully, Philippines are back. I would suggest you check out the company. As said, my personal price target for the next 18 months is a good $5.50. Longer term, we see it much, much higher on the pointed figure charts, but time will tell. I wish you all the best. Really, Merry Christmas. Stay healthy. That's the most important thing these days. And yeah, make sure you have enough red wine assembled and gin tonic in your cellar, because it looks like we are going to another lockdown. And the best way is to have some good food and some good wine to really survive those times. And I wish you, as said, all the best. Merry Christmas. Find time to rest a bit, and also a Happy New Year. And then we see us all latest then in 2021, and hopefully we can restart with personal roadshows from September onwards next year. Yeah, so to say, Sam, also for you and your family, all the best. Merry Christmas, and I'm pretty sure we talked before that. And yeah, thank you and take care. And of course, bye-bye and have a great evening. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.